Hey everybody, welcome to Southern Renaissance. We got a very special show for you today. We're interviewing my best bud right here, James Irvin, one of the greatest musicians I know, and just a good all-around feller. But man, thanks for doing this.
Thanks for doing it. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, man.
You must be hard up.
Yeah, nah, man. You're like one of the stars, dude. I was like, you were on my short list. I was like, I got to get James. And yeah, man, I had to have you on here. But yeah, so you're a fellow small town boy.
Yes.
So where are you from originally? I know a lot of this, but I'm pretending like I don't.
So I grew up in a little corner of southeast Morgan County, Alabama. And this would have been about 15 miles away from the big city of Arab, Alabama. The area I lived in was called Center Grove.
Okay.
That's where my daddy grew up and his daddy lived. Well, it is. I mean, and
literally,
like so many people that grew up in an area like that. I had my great grandma was across the street from us. My grandparents were next door to us, and next door would be like, you know, 2 football fields between you.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's, you know, it was the middle of nowhere. There was, that's how it was. And it's still there. Still, I was going through there yesterday, and it never changes.
Never changes.
Yeah.
It's like stuck in time.
It is.
Yeah, I understand, man. And I just like immediately I recognize like we have a similar mindset. Like we have our own kind of way of thinking, but we're from a small place. So we're kind of got that vibe.
There's a few people like that. I think the truest of weirdos come from places like that.
I think so.
And I bet it might have been the same for you too, but I tried hard to appear normal and fit in. But my ideas of normal, it was like stuff I got from TV. So when I was 4 or 5 years old, I really wanted to be John Fogerty, and a 4 or 5 year old in the mid-late 80s trying to look like John Fogerty is just weird.
Yeah. I mean,
but to me, that seemed like a good idea.
Yeah, dude. I would be the same way. I mean, I had all kinds of phases and stuff. That's the thing. Like, I'm like, football, that's weird. Let's do some skateboarding.
And that's what we're here on Saturday afternoon, and that's probably what everybody else is doing right now.
That's true. That's true.
And I could care less.
Yeah, we're one of like a handful of people in Alabama. They're like,
your show's gonna get canceled for that remark.
Yeah. I hope so. That's my goal. I'm sort of like starting off soft and then just tapering it up. And I'm like James. He's gonna take it to the next level, the pinnacle of the edginess.
Get off on one of my rants.
Get off them old time rants.
Yep.
But well, I remember I've known you for a while, but I think we met at the Blues Jam when Freddie was doing it at the Coffee Klatch. I can't remember for sure, but
it could have been the first time I remember meeting you would have been at Berkeley Bob's in Coleman.
Oh, you're right. I forgot about that. That's right.
Briefly, but we had a conversation right outside there. I remember when we got to talking about music and stuff.
I forgot all about that.
Yeah,
I did. Yeah, you're right.
And
man.
I think that was maybe 2006, 2007.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that you're totally right. I completely forgot about that convo. I was like, man, this guy's cool.
I thought the same thing. I remember we got into talking about rockabilly music and different stuff like that. And yeah, we hit it off. I'm
like, when people actually know about some of that, I'm like, oh, okay. Because you can now kind of jump into a subgenre or a group on the internet because you can
find out everything about it.
But back then, or even farther back then, you really had to like search. You had to be like an anthropologist pretty much to find out about some.
That's what shaped us.
Types of music, yeah,
because it was so limited. I had some of the same, with music and stuff like that. I had some of the same recordings I would watch over and over again. And it was like stuff that might have came on PBS or whatever, anything to do with rock and roll, and I would have it, recorded on VHS.
Yeah,
and I would just watch it over and over again because that was the only glimpse you got of that.
Yeah,
especially we didn't have MTV where I lived, So if you went to spend a night with somebody who lived in the
spend the night
with the cousin who had it or whatever it was, I would stay glued to the TV, just wanting to see any of it.
Yeah, man, it really meant a lot, and I forget how much that meant to it, and like how exciting it was when you had this new. You find a new album you hadn't heard and you're like, what is it? It's like, now it's just like instant gratification, which I guess is okay, but it loses a little bit of the magic, I think.
There goes that kid on that dirt bike again.
Oh, yep. James has got some wild man going around on a dirt bike around this neighborhood.
Them kids, I don't know who bought him that dirt bike, but
he told me he was about to take his shirt off and go after him. I'm like, let's start a show.
I did the other day.
That's awesome.
I didn't catch him.
I'm like, let's start a show with no stereotypes, and you're like, I'll pull my shirt off and go after that fella. But hey, that's what we do. We hang in there and we just use it to our advantage, man.
That's all you can do.
Yeah. So you remember, I know you're talking about John Fogerty. Was that one of your like earliest memories of when you heard music and you were like, man, that is something I want to do?
Yeah. And it was, both of my parents played, and our house was like, almost like a concert venue in a sense, because everybody knew my dad in the area is playing guitar, and my mom played banjo, and so people would come over on the weekends to party with my parents because they knew that they would get the instruments out.
Nice.
And start playing, and a lot of the stuff they played I didn't care about at the time, because they played a lot of bluegrass and stuff like that.
Sure.
But yeah, John Fogerty, CCR. The first thing that caught me was I heard "Up Around the Bend."
Oh yeah,
and it just managed. I was like, what is this? I got to have it. So
yeah, man.
Ended up with their entire discography over a year or so, and then John Fogerty's solo stuff. And then because of that, I wanted to be John Fogerty. So I would make a mic stand out of Duplo blocks. And because my dad's mandolin was sunburst, it looked kind of like John Fogerty's Rickenbacker. So,
oh yeah.
But,
did you wear the lumberjack clothes and had the crazy bald haircut?
Oh man, I tried so hard to look like him. And then when I seen him in the 80s and his hair and stuff had changed, I was like, wanted to wear my hair like that, It was weird. Man. Like I said, what a weird 4 or 5 year old trying hard to look like
that is interesting. I was the same way with like, the rockabilly stuff, and kind of at that age, it was like, I just got obsessed with it, but I don't know.
It's so cool, man.
Yeah, it is. Like, and it's right there in the same vein. It's like, it's all roots based stuff. And man, that dude is an awesome songwriter and just awesome player.
It was so weird. Thinking back on it now, I was playing drums as far back as I could remember, a snare drum at least. So I wanted to play drums, but I wanted to be a front man too, because John Fogerty, had I known that at that time that he played all the instruments on Centerfield and all his solo albums before that, I would have that would have just been even more inspiring. And I didn't even find that out until a few years ago that he was the one.
I honestly didn't know that either.
Everybody always assumes it was Kenny Aronoff, but it was, John Fogerty went in and played everything, just laid it down track by track, and it sounds awesome, man. It's like.
So that leads me to my next question. What was because you're a multi-instrumentalist. You play a lot of different instruments, man.
Not really, but
to me you do.
Kind of.
To me you do. But what was the instrument you started on? Was it like playing guitar?
It was drums for sure.
Was drums.
I had my uncle on my mom's side had a drum set, and he ended up like throwing it in the dumpster. Old Japanese set, like there was a ton of them around. This one happened to, the brand name was Norma. They were all made in the same factory, and it was blue sparkle. And he threw it in the dumpster, and my mom saved the snare drum. Right. So I ended up with it.
Nice.
So during all these weekend jam sessions, I was playing snare drum. And the thing I always heard, had I known then that I would hear this my entire life, my dad would always be like, play soft, play softer. We need to get him some brushes, play softer.
Yeah,
I wanted to just,
Sure. It's fun.
I'm still working on that.
No, man.
But, so it was drums, and I begged forever. And 8th birthday, my dad happened to find a small drum kit, and they let me have. We lived in a single wide trailer, and they let me have a drum kit in there.
Okay, wow.
And we would
supportive parents, man.
We would get to, and we would. We would jam together, and it became a thing. And later on, I ended up playing drums in bands with my dad playing guitar,
That's awesome.
Country bands and stuff in the area. So it was cool, man. And it was something, I think drums were something I always knew the basics of. So when I got the kit, everything just made sense. And I was able to, play songs. I could hear that and just play what they were. So.
Yeah, man. Well, I loved your drumming.
Thanks, man.
It's like always like you. I mean, I can't even put it in words how you play, like how good you are, and just the feel. And it feels weird, like because you're my bud, but like I really mean that, man. Like you're always incredible, dude.
Thanks, man.
And you're all around. Your feel is just amazing, and your showmanship, like you're just. Like you're fun to watch.
Way later,
you're fun to watch play. Like not every drummer is fun to like watch, but like you're like got that little Keith Moon vibe going in there, here and there. Like you're your own thing, but like you're just entertaining to watch.
Well, I think you caught me at just the right time the first time you heard me, because I was so incredibly shy for the majority of my life. So that first year of playing on the road and stuff like that, I was sitting back behind the drums going,
really? I cannot imagine you like that, man. And I can't even imagine you being shy. It's like, that's not the jam, but I can understand.
I was, I think I still am. Sometimes, I'll want to go back to that a little bit, but I was really in mid-20s before I started relaxing and having fun playing drums and trying to do some tricks and stuff like that.
Yeah, man. Well, you definitely, I mean, you've got such a broad spectrum of the kinds of music you like. I can see little things like you're like doing the stick rolls, like one of the, and you're throwing all these little weird random things in there. And I love it, man.
Cool, man.
Just
Thank you.
You can play aggressive, but you can also lay back. And yeah, it's just killer, man. Well,
thank you.
Tell me about your band, The Nerve.
The Nerve. And the way that started, and I had tried to put this band together for a long time. I started writing songs when I was, when I was a kid, I started trying to write songs. They were incredibly stupid songs. And then as a teenager, I think I got a little bit better. And, I had the chance to record them in an actual studio. And I started out, that was in the mid 2000s. And it started out, my friend Greg Rowell, who I'm sure you remember Greg, you used to see him around. Yeah. And he was working at a place out in Muscle Shoals, and they were in Tuscumbia actually, and they were doing something over there, and they were doing a lot of Southern soul stuff like that. So I ended up coming over and visiting one time, and so they had me. I kind of bartered with them at first. I would play drums on some stuff they had in exchange. I would record my stuff, but they had a small record label they were doing, so they decided they would release something on me. So I went over and recorded. I think 8 out of the 10 songs was stuff I wrote when I was a teenager. So I get, and I play some of it live now too. I get kind of cringy hearing back at it because stuff.
I know what you mean. I've got a few songs like
I think everybody feels that way, but it's like, whatever. But when I recorded them, so I kept trying to put a band together to, to play those songs basically. And I would throw something together every once in a while. I was playing with the Nukes full time too. So it was hard to kind of line up a show and then put a band together. And it was just a lot of trouble. And, flash forward years later, and I'd always used the few shows I did do. I think most of them I had used Matt Ross on bass, so we had known each other.
Cool dude.
Yeah,
I love Matt.
I think it took me a good 10 years, I think, to kind of become friends with him after, being around him every week.
Yeah, he's a hard man to love. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
No, it takes a little while, man, which is kind of cool about it. Which is kind of cool about him. But yeah, so I made CD number 2, another solo CD, and more recent stuff I wrote over with Jeremy Stevens. And at that point, I was just really itching to record some original stuff again. And I had been over there doing a couple of different sessions, and the Nukes did an album over there, and I'd worked with him before when we did a live one that Johnny Sandlin produced. So that was my first time meeting Jeremy. So we get in there, and I was kind of like, it was another one of those barter deals almost. Jeremy's like, hey, I got this tape machine. Would you like to be my guinea pig? We can record some of your stuff. I can learn how to work this. And so we did it like that. And once again, it became like, well, I need to put a band together to play this stuff live. Yeah. And this time it actually worked. It started out, I had just a 3-piece. I had Matt on bass. I had my buddy Charles Lyle played drums. And we kept going for a little while. Ended up, we did some big shows too in that 2016 when that CD came out. And then we just kept playing local just because it's a fun band. Yeah. And eventually Chase Armstrong came to play drums, and that's somebody I'd met years before playing on the same band. He was playing with the Skeeters at the time, and I remember just being blown away by his drumming. And I had played right before him, and I thought I was pretty good. And then I watched him play, and I was like, oh my god, he was so good, man. And they had just been on tour too for a few months, and
so he's still fresh.
They were playing a hometown show, in Fort Payne at that theater there.
I got you.
And man, he just tore it up. I was like, man, if I ever get to work with this guy. So he ended up playing drums, and then not long after that, I was Aaron Wilson, who also plays in the Nerve. I started seeing him out at some shows, and me and him finally put 2 and 2 together that we had known each other years before in like the late 90s. Okay. There was like this little singer-songwriter in the Round group that my sister had got invited to. It was called Jerry's Kids, because the guy that put it together, his name was Jerry. Okay, gotcha. And I forget who all was involved in that, but I remembered Aaron Wilson, and I showed up for that a couple of times when I was around 17, And so, fast forward 20 years, like, we know each other.
Yeah, I've done that before too. Yeah, my memory is awful, and I'll like, hey Tony, I'll like give away my secret right now. I call a lot of people man because I don't remember your name. It's nothing personal. It's just I have a terrible memory.
I did the same thing, and sometimes I've known these people for so long that it's embarrassing for me to call them what I think their name is. Yeah, and you're gonna be like, I've known you for 20 years.
Exactly. I do the same
with man, but Aaron had, eventually we got to talking, and he was like, I think he had got a copy of the last CD I did, Not Safe From Anything, that I did at Clearwave at Jeremy Stevens' place,
who we just interviewed like the other day. It's cool because all these and he was talking about Max Russell, who was on. It's like all kind of, and that's one of the things, man. It's so much cool stuff going on that we know about. Like there's a certain scene, and like, but it's like I want people to know about all this cool stuff going on, and
it's always been that way, and probably even more so years ago. And fortunately, a lot of the guys, at least a percentage of them, are still doing stuff and still out there. Maybe not as often, but you can still see them.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
But yeah, Aaron, dug the CD, dug the vibe, and he told me he was about to do one and asked me if I'd produce it, which I know absolutely nothing about, other than my name was listed as a producer on the first and second album, which that would be me telling whoever engineering, can you make that part sound more like that? But that's about anyway. So I ended up just basically playing drums on his record and just kind of being an extra set of ears. Cool. And he had a band. He was fronting, and they were playing a little bit. And I finally asked him, I was like, man, why don't you just join my band and we can both play our original songs in that band?
That's cool.
And he gave it some thought, and finally he was like, finally he did, and we started playing together. We were still calling ourselves James Irvin Trio, which came about by accident. I did not name it that.
You're full of yourself, man. As my band is called after my own name.
But no, it was funny because we got the first show we ever played. A contract came in for it that I had to sign, which that's totally stupid most of the time. But on this particular one, that was okay. But they had listed us as James Irvin Trio, and I was like, okay, so we just went with that. But we finally went with the Nerve, calling it the Nerve. So, and like adding Aaron too, all of a sudden we went from being just 3-piece guitar band to we've got another guy who can sing, but also write songs, can play guitar and keys. And he's also cool. Really good
utility man.
Yeah,
nice.
Totally.
That's always
really
awesome.
Really good piano player, and so yeah, we've added that whole other thing to it, and now I'm excited anytime we get to play that band. It's just a lot of fun, which isn't very often anymore. We're all busy doing different things. But we're playing tonight, so I'm excited about that. I'm like, cool, we get to play.
I know that's the sucky things because I got a gig tonight with my band, so we don't get to hang out or see each other because we'll have like different gigs at certain nights and a lot of stuff going on. But man,
you know how it's always been, man. The only time musicians get to see each other if they're not in the same band together is when one of them dies and they have to go play a benefit concert.
It's unfortunate.
They're all on the same bill.
It's kind of the way that I think you're right, man.
Happens so much, but it's also cool that this is the kind of music community where people do that.
Yeah, dude.
It's
for sure.
The camaraderie it's really cool.
That's something that really I noticed, man, right away because I was just a silly punk rocker from Coleman, and I started, hanging out more in Huntsville and got to know Freddie, and then and then I realized, man, these people are really supportive of each other, and you don't get that in every scene.
Most of them, yeah. There's always that percentage of,
Oh yeah.
Guys that feel like it's a competition or whatever,
ridiculous.
But I think the good outweighs the bad.
Yeah, man, for sure. Well, that was one of the things I was going to ask you. You were talking about earlier that you were talking about the Nerve. I was wondering how that differentiated from James Irvin, like solo stuff. So I guess that answered my question. So it's like with the Nerve, you've got like more than one songwriter.
Yeah,
you're doing your stuff, but then you've also got the other guy.
We got a rock pile thing going on.
Rock pile.
There's James Irvin
as long
solo.
as it's not a human pyramid or nothing.
there's James Irvin solo records and Aaron Wilson solo records, but together we play as the Nerve, kind of like with Dave Evans and Nick Lowe doing their separate solo records.
That's cool, man.
Playing together.
That's awesome though, because I know y'all make a good team, so that's actually a great idea.
Well,
man.
So far that could change tonight. You never know.
You're gonna sabotage it all. No, I don't see it. Like, I feel like you could just play a gig in your sleep and it would still be awesome. Like, you would just be.
Obviously you weren't there last night.
Oh, come on, man. Yeah, I couldn't imagine.
No, that's different with the band, because I do the solo gigs and stuff through the week, and that's cool. I enjoy doing it, but it's not, like if it is a bad show or if it is, you just got the wrong crowd or whatever. If you got your buddies with you, it makes it so much more tolerable.
Oh man, it does. I just treat it like I try to have fun no matter what. Like I don't like a sort of a indifferent audience. Like if they're kind of like upset, like I'm like, well, this is kind of funny. It's a social experiment. I would get some sort of emotion going. I would love for you to like it, but I'd rather have that than like, whatever, I'm going to eat my lasagna.
Yes, I would too. I'd rather, give me something.
Some sort of emotion.
Either love me or hate me. Don't just sit there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will, man. And it's a weird thing that happens, but if the crowd isn't giving anything back, it'll mess with me. It messes with me. It's because I want to, and I mean this too, especially in the band setting. I want to give everything I have, as much as I can possibly give.
And you do, man. It's super
I
obvious.
try to. I definitely try to. And it might, some people, it might not be good enough for them. You never know. It's, it's subjective.
Sure. Yeah.
Some people might think it's just total crap, and that's okay.
They're wrong.
Give me
obviously.
something. Hate it.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on stage and punch me. Just do something.
Yeah. It's just something like rock and roll. It's just like, it's just something about that. I'm glad you understand what I'm saying. And I figured you would, man. Because some people, they're like, whatever, it's a gig. They can eat their lasagna and I'll play my covers for 4 hours or whatever. But I just, it's not me, man. It is hard to do.
And
like
I do it
sucks
sometimes.
The soul.
It does, man. I love, not that it was a bad gig last night or whatever, but it was just kind of background music. And you what you feel, and you're just like, oh, man, what did I do?
Because you're a natural artist, a natural performer, and it's like, it just feels weird. You're the radio. But
if I can touch just one heart.
It's corny. There's so much of that is corny, but it's true. Like, so it's totally.
There is something true to that. And I've always like, especially on the solo gigs and stuff like that, the covers that I do, it's always just been stuff I liked, and it is not for everybody. It's
always
not radio
good
hits.
Covers though, man.
But not everybody thinks so, but you'll get one guy who like
me
really, really appreciates, and that always makes it worthwhile.
I heard you do a cover of Cuts Me Up. I've never heard anyone on earth do a cover of that other than you. I was like, that's awesome, by Peter Murphy of Alt Rant. And then you're good at the Dire Straits stuff, and that's not.
No, that was my second love. I'm going to say third love after John Fogerty. Then it was G and F and R. Guns N' Roses.
They're rock and roll, man.
Man, Appetite for Destruction, that was one of those.
It was a good album.
I sat there with the Walkman on over and over again, listening to that. And then all of a sudden, I wanted to look like Axl Rose. And my oldest sister would dress me up to look like him.
Nice.
So here I was at 6 at this time. At 4 and 5, I looked like John Fogerty. At 6, I was trying hard to look like Axl Rose from one extreme to the other.
That's hilarious.
And, the only thing worse than a 5-year-old trying to look like John Fogerty is a 6-year-old trying to look like Axl Rose. And everybody thought I was a girl.
I used to have long hair too, man. Yeah, I'm glad that I don't have a higher pitched voice, because I just sing lower or baritone, and like, because I know your voice kind of, as you get older, it gets lower, it seems like. So some of the like Axl Rose that's still trying to how do you do that, man?
Well,
that would
I think
shred
for him,
your voice.
Him and every other 80s vocalist, I think their in-ear monitors have ruined them.
Oh, yeah.
Because they can hear with such clarity that they don't have to push as hard.
That's good. That makes sense. Yeah, I've never thought about that.
I've heard a lot of them, man. Even one of my favorite vocalists ever, Jeff Keith from Tesla. I mean, he sounded great. That was another one of my early loves, man. That was right after Guns N' Roses would have came Tesla, like right around the time of a 5-man acoustical jam, mainly because they cussed on the record.
That's wild.
But then it got me, whatever got me into it, that got me into it. And he's just one of the best rock vocalists. But you hear him singing now, it's like he's singing with half voice.
Oh, yeah.
Weird. But he's got them ears in.
I get it, man. That makes total sense. I've never thought that. I've never put 2 and 2 together. I know I've tried in ears, and it's great to hear yourself, but I feel so closed off. Like I feel like I'm not present, and I'm so used to having like monitors just blaring at me and working the mic. Like you get louder and you get away from the mic and like just hear what's the sound of the room.
The sound of the room, the sound of the stage, the sound of the other people you're playing with. That's the guys that, and everybody's playing through, campers and fractals and all that stuff now. And
I think they even had, that's a random, like off this topic, but you played at the Grand Ole Opry. I've heard that there's all that stuff at the Grand Ole Opry, even in the back, like they got modelers and stuff.
There probably is. We had, our guitar player was using a actual amp on the stage. Of course, there was baffles in front of it.
Oh yeah.
I'm playing. They had the drum kit up there was kind of neat because it was like set up where you could play it where either a lefty or a righty would be comfortable on it. Which by that they just put cymbals everywhere and like big monster,
not like a Tommy Lee like rotating drum cage.
Not quite
thing.
there. That's the thing I always thought was so funny about like 1970s, 80s drum kits. Like in country music, they would have crap everywhere, and then you hear boom click.
I never thought about it. That's hilarious. Yeah, no rototom solos, nothing, man. It looked cool, I guess.
They only got to use them toms if they played Elvira.
That's the Tom signature Tom song.
You ready back here? We're going to Elvira. You can use them tom toms.
That's hilarious.
Anyway.
So true, man.
I forget what we were talking. I got off on Jeff Keith and
yeah,
knows
man,
where we went.
That's what I was like, this is gonna be difficult. Like my good buddies, it's like we go on so many tangents, but it's fun.
This will be the longest episode of what do you call this thing anyway?
It's a Southern Renaissance is
Southern
the name
Renaissance.
of it. So that actually comes from I try to think of a good name, but that actually comes from an actual historical movement. Right after the Civil War, the South, there was a group of writers that were kind of like, they were sort of off the beaten path. They were sort of a little more progressive, and they were putting stuff out, and they were like, that's Southern Renaissance. And I'm like, that's me, man.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was cool. Like, it just sort of, this name sort of stuck out, and like somebody just handed it to me, and I couldn't believe there wasn't already another podcast with that.
I like that.
But it kind of like, there's different levels of it, and it's fun to Renaissance and say it real Southern too. You know? Well, I know one of your recent songs, Jacob, it's 11:30.
Oh, yeah.
You released it on 10 Ton Records, which we talked about with Jeremy the other day. I always say his name wrong. I'm always like, Jeremy.
Well, how can you not? It's all them J names in the Southern accent.
J names.
Jeremy Joshua.
Jeremy Joshua Johnson. Jacob.
Jacob's 11:30. Get in the house. Which is not the song. Yeah, there was a bunch of stuff I was working on over at Clearwave, getting ready to do, solo record number 3 before the old pandemic hit, and then we took a break for a while, and coming out of that, it's just been kind of slow going back. But that's one we had recorded not long before that. Before the pandemic happened, so finally put it out, and that's the one song where I've there's 2. The last one I released was called "You're Not Really Gone," and Aaron Wilson's playing keys on that song. Cool. And on Jacob, it's 11:30. My friend Scott Todd put some additional guitar on there, and
cool.
He is absolute beast of a guitar player, session player. Like he can sound like any guitar player you want him to.
Oh, that's cool.
And super nice guy. So he put some cool slide stuff on there for me, which not like Allman Brothers slide, but more like that Natalie Imbruglia song kind of slide.
Okay. A little more like subtle, ambient.
Yeah, the ambient kind of stuff.
Yeah, that was cool too.
And he
man.
knew exactly what I was talking about. And he was like, "Oh yeah, man, here, just like that. Yeah, there. Thank you. Cool.
Nice, man. Yeah, it helps to have somebody with experience like that. They're like, I got it, man.
Oh man, he's a monster. So yeah, we put that out, and that'll be on the 3rd solo record, which I think we're pretty close to wrapping that up. I think I've got maybe one more song I want to track, and I'm not even sure how many that'll make it. My other 2 have had 10 songs on them, and that seemed good, but I guess there's not really. This could be 8 songs.
Yeah, it's weird how things have changed about albums and stuff. It's like, well, I'm going to release 4 songs. That's my album. Or I'm going to release 80 songs. That's my album.
Yeah, I don't guess it really matters. You look back in the 70s.
We used to wear them flared jeans.
Yeah, some albums had 5 or 6 songs on them, just depending on how long they were.
That's true. Yeah, some weird progressive like jams where they sort of drug out.
Sometimes, yeah, there won't be any of that.
None of that. Well, man, like that's one of the things. Your drumming is awesome, and you play with Microwave Dave, Jason D. Williams, and you've played with a lot of people, and your drumming is so awesome. But your solo stuff and the stuff where you're more the front man, it's so good. Like that's what I kind of like. That ain't fair. He gets to do it all, and he's good at all of it. But I mean, I'm like, this guy is like Prince, because you go in there and I don't know how many of your albums you've done this or songs, but like you've recorded literally all of it. I know on some of your stuff.
I did on every song I've recorded. I've done that way, and on the last album, on the song Saturday's Slow, and I hate that I didn't get to be here for this, but we had it, pretty much finished. And Jeremy happened to be over at Johnny Sandlin's studio one day, laying down, having because there's a B3 organ at Johnny Sandlin's place,
yeah.
which is now at Jeremy's place.
Yeah, he was.
But,
I was watching him play it the other day. It's all connected.
He was over there getting some B3 track by the great Clayton Ivey,
dude.
And so Clayton was doing some stuff. Jeremy's like, see what you can do with this. So he put on Saturday Slow and had him put some B3 on it, and it's subtle. There's not a lot there, but what you can hear, that's Clayton Ivey. So that was the only other musician on that second record other than me. And then on this one, I've got, like I said, Aaron Wilson's on the one song and got Scott Todd on the others. So I'm definitely not opposed to that. A lot of times it's just easy for me if I've got it.
Oh yeah.
If I've got it in my head to just go down and put down some drums and then build around it.
Yeah, I could see
basically,
that, man.
I would love to get the nerve in the studio. It's just with everybody, and we tried it once and we got a video. It was funny. we cut one of Aaron's songs while we were there, and it somehow accidentally ended up on local radio, and we weren't finished with it.
It's like that Buddy Holly thing where he's like, I recorded this, buddy. He's playing at the skating rink, and he's like, I just released it.
So, but other than that, that one time, it would be cool if we didn't all live so far away and it had so much going on. It makes it difficult to record as a band. But yeah, I love anytime I get to, go do a session with a band, play drums for them or whatever. That's always a blast. That I think is the best and funnest way to do it, is with a group of guys.
Yeah, man.
Everybody kind of putting their own thing to it. But how I've done it kind of started out of necessity, I think.
I got you, but you pull it off, man. And that's what's funny is you're like, I'm no producer, but then you're like building a album from scratch, like bit by bit, and like, no, you're a producer, man. Well, you know what you're doing.
If there wouldn't have been somebody working the buttons for me, it couldn't have happened. I took the Tascam Porta 2 Ford track as far as I could take it. And on that, I was a producer because I figured out which high bias tapes sounded best.
Heck yeah. Process of elimination.
I did. I took that as far as I could take it. And, that was cool. Like somebody who really knows how to manipulate all them faders and knobs and switches.
That leads me to, we were talking about Jeremy Stevens earlier, and he's made a huge contribution. Just the whole scene of his incredible ear, man, and and his whole vibe in that studio over there is just, it's perfect, man, for like recording really good records. It's just, nothing fancy. It's all vibe, and it's like
he's so easy to work with.
He is, man.
I know how it was for me. I think it is for a lot of artists when they were young and they are green. Like the thought of a professional recording studio is intimidating.
Yeah, man.
And you go over there, it's just laid back, and he's cool, and there's nothing. It reminds you nothing of Nashville, which is the best thing, because that place.
Yeah, it's something.
It really is something. And it's nothing like that at Clear Wave Indicator.
Yeah.
Which I think is one of the main reasons people will drive from far away to camp out there for a few days and record there, because it's just easy. You can be yourself. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's he's always, I told him, like, man, you put up with me. You got the patience of a saint.
He's about the music, and he's about the song.
He cares.
He's not worried about getting rich. He's not worried about having this band on his resume and nothing like that. It's just he will give anybody a chance and try to bring out the best in them. And he really did a lot for me. It just came around at the right time. And even when it comes to just like calling me for session work, there were some times when that really saved me, when I was like, man, it's January. I need some money.
I hear you, man. That's another thing. You do this for a living. You work your tail off, man. There's lots of you people that do this, and that's not easy, man. That's really difficult. You people. But it's funny, usually I have a full-time job, and I'm like trying to do the thing on the side, but it's to rely on that for your income, man. That's more people need to support awesome artists like you. You're the real deal. You're authentic. That's what it's about. Like you're literally, your heart is in it completely, and that's what's missing with some artists. But like my group of friends, it's like you guys have it. You have that like special thing that makes it authentic and legit.
Well, there's
too legit to quit.
Talking about the authentic part too. I mean, you look around, like what's on radio or TV or YouTube or the TikTok is the TikTok. All that stuff. It's so much, and it always has been. I know since rock and roll started, it's always been somewhat about the gimmick, but
sure.
the gimmick is it's overshadowed not only pop culture, but every subgenre, every counterculture, the gimmick. It's like I was laughing, whenever it was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, whenever I started laughing at these guys, they all started looking like early 80s Hank Jr.
Yeah.
And doing outlaw country.
The hipster outlaw country.
And it was like, and man, they're so focused on talking about how they drink whiskey. It's like, what is that? What does that even mean?
How about write a good song?
and most of them, they're not. A lot of them are from the city, and I think that's why I've always gotten so. I get mad about people who are pretentious, who pretend to be
what they're not.
You and I are both from the country, and even though we can talk like it, like
we got pretty mind.
Do you remember like trying to just be yourself in a place like where we grew up? And it's like we were surrounded by cows and trees.
Exactly.
And there were bootleggers, and there was basically that song Copperhead Road is where I lived. I wasn't in the holler, but the holler was just down the mountain from where I was. And it was, and it's still like that out in the middle of nowhere. So it's weird but I liked what I liked, man. I was into CCR, and then I was into GNR, then I was into Tesla, then I was obsessed with Dire Straits, and then I was into Nirvana and punk rock, and I loved all that, and I felt like the only person in the world who was. And definitely nobody at my school was into any stuff like that. I was a total creep, like and I look back at it. Well, no, I had one friend who we are still friends to this day. Who was also into a lot of that stuff, but he could also play sports and stuff like that, So he was a little more well-rounded, but he was totally into the same, and the movies and stuff too at that time, all of it. And I just stayed into it, but I was weird. So when you get into a city around people trying to be weird, it's like, man, what is wrong with you?
You pick up on it immediately. It's like transparent. And
do you remember when you meet your first other like punk rocker as a teenager? Like you come to the big city, right?
It's like New York
that has 20,000 people in it.
Exactly.
And you see another punk rocker, and then you find out they're completely full of it. So and so says you was a prep like 2 years ago.
Exactly.
But and I see it's so funny, like to see people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s who are still like identifying as whatever,
hanging on to it.
It's like I like so much different stuff, and I am, I'm weird. I wish I wasn't, but that's the way my mind works. I get obsessed about really weird things, and it's just and I love it. And then it goes away. I'm on to the next.
That's what it's about, though, man. I mean, you're yourself, and I totally get what you mean about. I mean, we came from such small places in my high school. It was like you think about, those are the losers. Those are the weird folks. Like, no, there wasn't a group. It was like you were the only one.
Yes.
Like, there wasn't even like a group that you could like gravitate toward. You're like, no, that guy's, he thinks for himself too much.
If I would have had like some goth kids to like us up,
Yeah,
like,
man.
Anything, any kind of
The whole gang.
subgroup like that would have been cool, but it just didn't exist, man.
Yeah. But I feel like that's why you have people like you and other people. It's like you have to, it's a stronger personality. You have to like get past that, because if you're a follower, I mean, just human nature, but you're always going to be yourself. And yeah,
that's the only way to be. And I'm not saying I always have been, because I definitely tried to fit in, and it just doesn't work, man. When you're a little weirdo, it just ain't gonna work. You ain't fooling nobody. I remember the what's the weirdest thing? How did you know, like when you were a kid, that like, oh, I'm a little different here. I'm weird. Like people think I'm weird. What was one instance you can remember where you're like, oh, I'm definitely weird?
That's a good question. I'm wanting to think, like, just off the top of my head, one of the certain events was like I used to play soccer, and I love soccer. It was we won a state tournament and all that. I was into it. But I remember us riding back with some of the team in the back seat, and I just started singing some Weird Al or something, and they were like, what is I got that look, and I'm like, yeah, I'm weird. Yeah, I get it.
I remember that look. I've seen it a few times. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, man, this just well, I know I was talking about you play with Microwave Dave. How you've been doing that for a while,
man. It's and we haven't really, since pandemic, we haven't got to do much, but I got that job back in 2004, and I had been playing locally in Huntsville for a few years off and on, but solid for a year. I'd had a couple of weekly gigs, and I was like, I felt good about it. That was great, man, because I felt like I was getting somewhere with it, and it's what I'd wanted to do. And yeah, Dave approached me one night, man. It was at the old Sunday Night Blues Jam at the Coffee Clutch.
I think Freddie kind of told me that story that Dave had come in and he saw you playing, and he was like, "Man, that guy! I can't do a good Dave impersonation." But
well, thankfully, you got me to do it.
It's perfect.
I have to get the on the microphone just right.
That's perfect. Yeah, I'm not able to do that, man. But you've been around him a lot more.
Been around him a lot, yeah.
Man.
It was weird how that happened. I remember seeing him play live when I was about 11 years old. I know my dad was a fan, listened to his radio show, and at one of the big spring jams in town, we went over there and watched Microwave Dave and Nukes play. Definitely knew his name, see him around town, and it was like a thing. You're like, wow, that guy's great. That guy's doing stuff. He's been doing stuff. So when he approached my 22-year-old self and asked me to play drums for it, and he was super nice to me. He talked to me and complimented me on my drumming, and then he's like, well, take a day or two to think it over and let me know. I was like, no, man, I want the job.
Yeah, I'm on it.
I've been wanting a full-time band. And he did, man. I went over, and they were really patient with me, because like any 22-year-old that lives in Arab, Alabama, half the time I didn't have a working car, or working drums or whatever. So they were really cool and helped me out a lot. Him and Rick both, the bass player Rick Godfrey, they helped me out a lot of just being patient with me. Let me be 22.
Yeah.
I tried not to cause too much trouble, but we but the music was so great.
He's so good, man. Just another authentic person. Like he's literally
it's what it is. He's got all these different influences. He's done all these different things in his life, and that's it. This is what comes out. This is how he is, and he's a wonderful person on top of that.
He's so humble. Like he's so like good. Like you can tell he's like, he doesn't talk to anyone any different, no matter who you are.
Right.
He's always like, hey, like
I don't think I've ever really seen him get upset or anything. Yeah, just super nice guy, and Yeah, the music was absolutely great, and he's just the real deal, like you said. And it was when I started playing with Jason D. Williams, kind of the same thing. It was like, what you see is what you get.
Yeah,
and the show is fun.
Yeah,
and I know genuine characters, and Jason being from El Dorado, Arkansas, like another small town boy.
Yeah, so you get the feel.
Yes, we have such a blast when we're traveling because we'll just start doing voices and making up these, hypothetical characters and situations.
Yeah, man. Well, he's a piano player, and he's got that. I hate to always like make that the Jerry Lee kind of vibe. Like he can pull that off, like
big time. Oh yeah, he can pull it off. What's an interesting thing about Jason too is a lot of people get the wild, crazy Jerry Lee Lewis impression from the movie Great Balls of Fire, right? So Dennis Quaid, when he came to do that movie, and they were in Memphis and everything, he didn't really get to be around Jerry Lee Lewis. He spent a couple of weeks hanging out with Jason D. Williams.
So
the character he's playing in Great Balls of Fire, he's actually playing Jason D. Williams.
That's hilarious.
and Jason said he would act extra back then because he was younger and stuff, and he'd just turn it up a notch to get noticed. Man. And so all that joking and acting, Dennis got all that from Jason, which I think is hilarious.
That is hilarious.
Jason,
I love that movie.
He did that's his hands you see in the movie.
I remember you telling me that. That is so cool. Like, so it's literally his hands on the screen playing the parts. That's awesome, man.
So yeah, Jerry Lee Lewis, as you well know, and I'm sure
I'm obsessed, man,
was nothing like what you see.
Yeah.
Nothing like that. So
I have an embarrassing Jerry Lee Lewis story. I saw him at Samstown before he died. Like I guess he was like right at past 80 or something, and still just tearing it up. Like I was like, he'll play some of his old like slower country stuff, which I like that too. But he played like a whole rock and roll set, like really fast, and like you could hear it in his voice. But other than that, like his hands were already there. But after the show, I'm like so obsessed. I went and tried to sneak in his trailer, and like I got back. I was like one of them NSYNC. I was like a little girl at an NSYNC concert. I don't get starstruck much, but I was just like, man, I gotta meet him, but I didn't get to. But I went back there, and some of his band was trying to like change clothes and stuff, and they were like, what? This is not the kind of groupie we're looking for.
What backstage actually looks like.
Yeah.
Old guys changing clothes.
Exactly.
And a meat and cheese tray that's been sitting there all day. That's pretty much it.
I think you're right.
That's a good dressing room. You'll have that in the vegetable tray, and it'll end up sitting there all day. And you'll eat a little bit when you first get there, and you want to maybe make a sandwich after the show, and it's like, oh, it's got flies on it.
Dysentery.
It may have, but yeah, that's kind of what it's
you're
like.
A survivor, man. It built up dude. Your immune system is probably so built up for all that.
I think I do pretty good. I don't, I don't get colds and stuff like that too often. Allergies, but the serious ailments.
Yeah,
like
TB and stuff like that.
20 years of being on the road. I'm gonna tell you, this is a very personal story. So I don't put we had I've been pretty fortunate to be pretty healthy, have good digestive health and all that.
Yeah, man.
Until unfortunate incident last March, we were playing the South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, and we were at the Continental Club.
Okay.
And it's a cool little joint. And we walked through the back door, and there's old Mojo Nixon. He comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, man."
I love that guy.
I know. He's cool. And Jim Heath, the Reverend Horton Heath, played guitar with us that night.
Man, that's
it was a really exciting night. So, but about an hour before we went on stage, I went across the street and I ate a cheeseburger at this place, which was kind of a hip, fancy looking burger joint. They didn't even accept cash money. I had to give them my debit card.
Oh, man.
Which I've only used a handful of times. So I had that cheeseburger and everything, and walk across the street. I'm like, oh, man. Felt terrible. I was like, I'm like, I'm going to be carrying Jason's piano on the stage and something bad is going to happen.
Oh,
and
no.
It's Continental Club, small room anyway, and there's like, the bathrooms are just right there, but there was nothing but girls hanging out clustered by the bathroom and everything. You know? So I was like, man, it's going to happen during the show. It's going to happen during the show. This is terrible. I'd like to enjoy this moment now. Yeah. And then 20 years being on the road, never had this happen. So finally, make it through the show, load out, everything's cool. And for the very first time at the Buc-ee's outside of Austin, Texas, I used the bathroom at a truck stop. First time in my life. Yes, sir.
You're a maniac.
Well, I was.
Continental Club, more like Incontinental Club.
It almost became.
That's rough. Yeah. Sometimes it's desperation, man. I've used some very questionable places.
I'd never had that happen before in my life. So really? I'd say I was pretty lucky. But what could you do? At least it didn't happen on stage.
Yeah, that's right. You got through it.
I got through it. But other than that, I've been pretty healthy.
That's good, man. Didn't even have to bring a catheter with you.
I tried to eat right and exercise.
That's good for you, man.
Now getting to my age, you
get in a fight when you're pulling your shirt off with a dirt bike.
I was carrying a bag of maters over my next door neighbor the other day, and that kid come by on that motorcycle so fast, I almost went to toilet on myself right then. And I ended up dropping that bag of maters, and just getting old ain't no fun.
That's literally, that sounded like a conversation we would have with someone we know. Like
I think I've had that same.
That sounds exactly. It's hilarious, but it's normal. Like, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Me and my sisters used to joke about, what old people would talk about. Like maybe some great aunts and uncles would go visit across the street at my great grandma's, and we might pop over there, and they would all be sitting around. Well, we had Nell had been in the hospital recently, and we had got to talking about her Medicare, and they would sit there and have this conversation for like 2 hours. And if you had to go with your parents to visit somebody like that and sit there and there was no other kids around and there was nothing to play with,
you just had to
sitting there in the living room going,
yeah,
let's go.
Yeah, that's the way it was going to my granny's house. It was like, oh man, I don't want to hear about you crocheting.
Old people stuff in the South is still like that. Like we went to Baptist church as a kid.
Yeah,
that's you can smell the old man cologne mixed with the old lady perfume and double mint
Old
gum,
Spice, the original variety.
Bible leather. It's like all those smells.
Bible leather, yeah,
mixed together.
Those hymnals, like the dust in the hymnals.
New inspirational. It's called and the only. Going to Baptist church as a kid, the only time I enjoyed it was ever so often they'd have fellowship, and that meant everybody was bringing some good food to eat.
That's right. Get your belly full.
You could go run around and play and eat some good food.
Well, man, I know you went to Sun Studio. You got to record we have a share of that obsession, I think, with like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, man.
You got to record there with Jason D. Williams.
Yeah, it was really cool because it was. I had no idea it was going to happen or anything. At this time, I was just kind of playing part time with Jason. Anyway, I would go out and fill in for his drummer sometimes, or I would play guitar sometimes, and we did it was a show for PBS called Sun Studio Sessions. And so I found out, they asked me if I wanted to come and be part of it, a few days before. I was like,
let me think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I remember looking on YouTube and I searched, and that's where I first heard J.D. McPherson was on that show. I was like,
good, man.
Yeah, I liked what he was doing. And I like the show. What few episodes they had on there. So yeah, we went inside, and I remember I asked Andy Clark and Freddie Faust if they wanted to ride up with me, and they did.
Yeah.
They rode up with me and watched us tape it and everything. And
that's awesome.
You're in the room. You're in the live room there at Sun Studios.
That's crazy.
And the same drum kits in there that, U2 used. And I got Elvis's vocal mics on the floor tom.
Wow.
And just all that stuff.
W.S. Holland and all them.
Man, it was really cool. And yeah, we played it, and that was
That's
that.
killer, man.
And I'll tell you what I liked even with it was it's been a couple of years ago now, but we went over to it was another time with Jason, went over to Sam Phillips recording.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
That place was great. And, Jerry at the time was running. He was there, and he took me upstairs and showed me around and stuff.
Nice.
Showed me where Sam's desk was with the jukebox built into it and all that kind of stuff. And, just cool mid-century, state of the art at the time.
Stuff.
So we did. And unfortunately, we really only recorded some jingles there, but it was it was still fun.
It's still cool, yeah.
It was, it was the Jason D. Williams band just, doing some radio spots for some people.
Man.
But it was,
dude.
That was another cool one to record in. But yeah, Sun, is the history, man. Both of those places, some cool history.
For real, yeah. That is no joke. Well, man, it's just flown by because like you're just talking to you.
I talk too much.
You talk, you run at the mouth. But man, it's been awesome, and I sure appreciate you doing it.
Of course, man. Well, I hope your viewers and listeners will enjoy all my thoughts on everything, and
I think they will.
Thanks for having me, man. Thanks for coming over here and doing it.
Absolutely. Well, just real quick, is there any way? What's a good way to find out more about your music online or anywhere else?
Well, if you got a computer, you can go to seriously, the best way would be to just Google James Irvin music. And
bam,
that's going to show, some videos, releases or whatever, or, go to over to the social media to see where we might be performing at.
Yeah,
and
man.
Things like that. And
so you, James Irvin, and then you got The Nerve is your band, and then you also play drums with Jason D. Williams, and then you also play with Microwave Dave, along with other people, but just off the top of my head. So if you hear, if James is involved, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. So
I played with you a couple times too. It's been
that was always fun. It's always, that's where I can't hardly face the crowd because I'm like, you make me so happy. Like I look over and you're like over there smiling, playing the drum.
We'd both be hamming it up pretty good from what I remember.
We're a bunch of ham bones.
Tony Purdue, who's starting the video for Saturday Slow, one of my songs.
Oh yeah, I meant to mention that.
Mr. T, the bar owner, which is a little character I wrote, but he brought it to life. And I think one day we need to release the outtakes of the breakdancing. This guy is an accomplished breakdancer.
I'm hoping
I'm not sure if a lot of people know that or not.
Yeah, I'm hoping I can bust out some of that tonight because I'm just going to be singing. I don't play guitar. So, yeah, it's going to be weird. So we'll see what happens.
He's going to walk the dinosaur.
You'll play your gig tonight, and you may see me on the news next. This fella crippled himself live, and I don't know. We'll see what happens.
They'll say your name wrong. Local performer Tony Perdun is something like that.
Somebody's called me Tony Depraved before. I'm like, how did you get that?
Tony Depraved. That sounds like a good rockabilly, horrorbilly kind of Tony Depraved in the Fleshmongers or something like that.
No, the misfits with the upright bass is what I call it. But anyway, on that note, man, thanks so much for doing it, and we're gonna see you around. And like I say, go check out anything James is a part of. It's gonna be really good. And man, thanks so much, and taking me into your home to
of course
holler at you for a little bit. But hey, that's our episode of Southern Renaissance. We're gonna head on down the road a piece and see where we land. See y'all later.